tudo bem? Olha, hoje tem Blake e Mortimer, dois ilustres personagens do quadrinho belga que foram criados por Edgar Pierre Jacobs, um antigo colaborador de Hergé. E a série apareceria justamente nas páginas do jornal Tintin em 26 de setembro de 1946, no Segredo do Espadão, que depois seria publicado em 3 álbuns. É uma HQ desenhada na mais pura linha clara, com cores chapadas, nesse estilo clássico retrô. Enquanto em Portugal os personagens tiveram e ainda têm vida longa, por aqui Blake e Mortimer chegaram apenas em um único volume no final dos anos 1960, quando tiveram sua aventura, O Caso do Colar, publicada em alguns dos únicos 26 números do jornal Tintin que saíram no Brasil pela parceria Livraria Bertrand, Editorial Ibis e Editorial Bruguera. Hoje, Blake e Mortimer é uma das séries com maior vendagem atualmente na França e Bélgica. Ela narra as fantásticas aventuras do professor Philip Mortimer, brilhante cientista especializado em física nuclear e interessado em arqueologia, e do agente do Serviço Secreto Britânico de Contra-Espionagem, o MI5 Francis Blake, antigo piloto da Royal Air Force. Depois da morte do Edgar Pierre Jacobs em 1987, a série foi continuando na mão de outros autores, entre roteiristas e desenhistas, e o primeiro a fazer isso foi o Bob Demure em 1990, quando ele desenhou a continuação das 3 fórmulas do Professor Sato. Depois surgiram outros talentos da BD, mais uma vez lembrando, entre desenhistas e roteiristas, que continuaram esta missão, como Jean Van Damme, René Sterne, Ted Benoit, André Juillard, Chantal Despiglier, Antoine Aubin, entre outros. E é com orgulho que eu trago hoje o 25º álbum da série Blake e Mortimer, O Vale dos Imortais, Ameaça a Hong Kong, roteirizado por Yves Saint, que já escreveu outros volumes de Blake e Mortimer, também Torgal, e desenhado por 2 artistas dos Países Baixos, Theun Berserick, filho do pintor de arte Hermanus Berserick, que criou uma BD em 2012 sobre Vincent van Gogh, e Peter van Dongen, que eu já conhecia de Ramponcan, que saiu em francês inclusive, e de 3 dias no Rio, esse aqui que eu comprei em Amsterdã na loja Lambic. Em Portugal, como já acontece há um bom tempo pelas edições Asa, que é o editor local, a BD sai sempre com 2 versões de capa, sendo uma exclusiva da FINAC. Aqui estão as duas, tcharam, numa gentileza do amigo Pedro Bolsa, que mandou para mim lá de Lisboa. E neste álbum, em 2 partes, tudo começa imediatamente após o final do 3º volume de O Segredo do Espadão, em Lhasa, depois que o Palácio Imperial do ditador Bassam Dandu é destruído, arrasado completamente por um esquadrão de espadões, e o planeta está comemorando o fim da 3ª Guerra Mundial. Mas apesar do fim do conflito, ainda acontecem problemas na China entre nacionalistas e comunistas, e o senhor da guerra, Chile, tenta conseguir um manuscrito misterioso que lhe daria poder sobre o Império do Meio, ajudado depois pelo vilão Ulrich, ex-conselheiro militar de Bassam Dandu, enquanto o capitão Francis Blake é o encarregado de preparar a defesa de Hong Kong. Por sua vez, o professor Mortimer se interessa ainda em Londres, numa Londres arrasada por bombardeios, por uma peça arqueológica bastante cobiçada que pode metê-lo em confusão. Então esse é o meu resumo para O Vale dos Imortais, Ameaça a Hong Kong, a primeira parte de uma história que vai ter 2 álbuns, e eu vou anunciar um convidado muito ilustre agora. Vamos falar com um dos desenhistas, vou falar em inglês a partir de agora com o Peter van Dongen. Hi Peter, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for granting me this interview.
All right, thank you. Of course, I would like to do this interview.
When did you first start to get interest in Edgar Pierre Jacobs' Clear Line?
Well, I've been interested in Jacobs, I think, since my childhood, when I was 9 years old. The first book I have noticed, it was The Great Pyramid, Part 2, and it is an old version, an old copy from the 1950s, but I really loved it. Actually, before Jacobs, I was more into, and still am, in Tintin. You know, Blue Lotus, it's my favorite. And I was in Bob and Babette. It's from Willy van der Steen, another Belgian artist. Most likely the Belgian school, that's what I like. So yes, I was in my childhood with Jacobs.
I came into contact with your work for the first time in Holland when I bought 3 Days in Rio. Could you talk about this comic book in which the story takes place in Brazil?
Well, actually, 3 Days in Rio, it was a commission job. Here you see the English edition. It was actually made for this fashion brand, Gant. And they asked me, because of my previous work about Rampokan. And actually, this is a book about the director of Gant by then. It's published, I think, in 2012, 2013, I don't remember. But actually it's my first comic in full color, and it's just only 30 pages, and it's about the life of this director of Ghent. He was, as a child, he had a boat trip from Stockholm, Sweden to Rio, and actually I made a story about that. I made it up, just most of it's fantasy, but it was published as a book for the stores of Ghent in worldwide. There's an English edition, Swedish, and a Dutch edition for the comic market.
Then later, in the middle of Petrobras crisis in Brazil, you made this cover for Piauí magazine. How the invitation to do it come about?
Yes, I made this illustration for this magazine, and I was just asked by this magazine, Piau, I think, just by email, just through my website. I was asked for this illustration. So, well, I did it once, and since then I never heard anything of them. No problem, because I'm really busy, but it was a nice job. One of my first abroad, actually, as an illustrator.
So could you talk about Rampokan that might have opened the doors from the franco-belgian market to you?
I can. So I mentioned Rampokan before. This is the new colored edition of Rampokan. Originally it was in black and white with one color, duotone, and I made this when I was 23, and I worked about it on for 13 years. So the first edition was published in 1998, and part 2, Rampokan's Levens, was published in 2005. It's about the independent struggle of Indonesia against the Dutch, and it had attracted my attention because my mother is from Indonesia. She born there in 1941, and I noticed at school here in Europe, in Amsterdam, we learned everything about World War II in Europe, in Holland, for instance, but I never really had any lessons about the Dutch Indies. In those days, Indonesia, it was still a colony of Holland till 1949. And after World War II, through the Japanese occupation, the Dutch government thought, well, they could take back Indonesia again as a colony. But then the independent struggle of Indonesia started, the revolution, and so I never had any education about it at school, so I made it myself. I started reading books, and that finally I made this book. And now since a couple of months, it's now published in France again and in Holland, but now reissued in full color. So I'm very happy with it, you see, because it's already a book of 20 years ago when it was published first, and now it has a third life because it's already another print. So I'm really happy with it. It's my most important work so far, to me. There's no Blake and Mortimer without this book.
Peter, how did the invitation to do a 3-part Blake and Mortimer adventure come up?
Actually, how did it came? Well, we were invited, Teun and I, Teun Berswick and me. We just wrote an email to Dargo Publishers because we knew that the publisher, Dargo was looking for comic artists who could draw in the line of Jacobs. And because Teun and I, we all work in this clear line, ligne claire. So we thought, well, let's give it a try. Let's send an email with an attachment with our work, and let's hope for a test page. And we had this opportunity to make a test page. So this is part of the first page. Yves Sante, he wrote the two test page story. So this is the first page in pencil, a part of it. And here you see the ink version. You see. So, and it was located in Hong Kong, this story, on this test page. And for me, it was really an opportunity just to make it again, like in Southeast Asia, like Rampokan in Jakarta. And so, but now it was in Hong Kong. But to me, if you see this Chinese neighborhood, it could be the Chinese neighborhood in Jakarta as well in the 1940s. Actually, this building here, what I drew here, in fact, this is a building in Jakarta. It's still there. I made a picture of it in 1992 in Jakarta. So I made it up here in this Hong Kong scene in the Blake and Mortimer test page. And you see here it's the other part of it. Pencil. Just the test page, but we passed the test page. So we get through. So we were definitely the new Blake and Mortimer artists. That's how they described it in our mail. In the mail they have sent it to us. So actually we did it ourselves. We just sent them an email.
And what about to be a Dutchman who recreates one of the most emblematic Belgian comic book characters?
Teun and I, we're Dutch, and we are the first Dutchmen who are working on a Blake and Mortimer album, and that's quite, well, strange, because normally you are expecting Belgian or French comic artists to make this comic, but well, times are changing, so this time we are Dutch and we are influenced by the Belgian school, so there's no difference, except I need a translation because my French really sucks. So first, before start, I need a translation or a Google Translate, for instance. So that's quite something for Dutch people. They are proud to have Dutch comic artists in this Belgian series. And for us it's fun, of course.
Peter, in the Valley of the Immortals there is a comic book character from a comic book by Laurent Véron et Jan. It's Prince Odilon. How did it happen to having him in this Blake and Mortimer adventure?
Yeah, about this character, Père, this father figure. Well, it's a character from this comic, French comic, but it's an idea of Yves Sante, who wrote the script. And actually, I knew this character just only by image, but I never read a book of it. So, well, we did what Yves Sante was asking to us. So that's, well, I'm not really emotional connected with this figure, but he's there in the book.
How was your partnership with Yves Sante, the writer of this comic book?
Yeah, about our partnership with Yves Sante, it's fine, it's good. He just wrote the story and we were able to make critical remarks, and so that's good. We are free to do our own découpage, well, the paneling. He write the story for 12, let's say 12, 13 panels each page, and we are free just to make our own interpretation of it in the paneling, in the découpage. So, and that's, I think, well, quite important, that you have still the thought that you can add something to his story. So here you see page 48. First I make the découpage, the paneling of the script of Yves Sante. I made it for the whole album, 54 pages, you see, like this. And you can see here that I made my choices, how to tell a story in images, with a cliffhanger at the end, right? He's jumping across the wall. And of course, Yves Saint wrote a line that Mortimer should be jumping from a small garden place through a wall. So this is the decoupage, you're right. The paneling, and then I start drawing, right, on this size of 30 by 40 centimeters. You see, quite detailed a bit already in the antique shop. And then finally you see here then the ink page. I traced the pencil page on a clean sheet, as you see here, and then I inked it with a brush for basically for the characters, a thin brush, and the background I inked it with a pen. We think that Jacobs did the same, the characters with the brush and the background with a pen, or sometimes he did both, or only pen, but I choose for the brush because it's quite familiar to me.
So in this comic book you worked with another artist, Tom Bursidik. How did you do to manage the same graphic identity?
Well, I know Tom Bursidik already for quite a while, since 1993 or 2 maybe, and we worked together, not really for a series in a Dutch comic magazine. It was published and he drew the whole comic. I did the paneling, and a friend of us, Martijn Daalder, he wrote the scenario, the script, and since then we are connected as friends. And what we actually did by this Blake and Mortimer album, this album of Jacobs, it was our goal. Our drawing line, the clear line, should be, well, hopefully the most nearby of his, right, of Jacobs himself. And so what we did was just we looking carefully to what Jacobs did here in the 1950s when he drew this. So, and then we are, after the first pencil pages, we are just criticize each other, our pencil pages and drawings, so we correct each other. And doing the inking, well, we're just looking carefully to this and not really copying it, but, well, pay tribute to Jacobs. For instance, here, this for the Portuguese cover, I made that one. Teun did the 2 regular ones for the French market and the European market, but Portugal has its own, a second cover, and I made the cover for that edition, Portuguese edition. It's the original.
And what about the documentation process to draw a story that takes place in Hong Kong during the 50s?
Yeah, it takes place in Hong Kong, and Yves Saint, he gave us a couple of old books, books with old photographs of Hong Kong through the 1920 till 1950. So a lot of old pictures, and of course Google and YouTube. On YouTube you can find lots of footage taken there from in the 1940s in Hong Kong, and that's remarkable because that's really easy. Now, back then when I started with Rampokan, for instance, for this building, it's still there in Jakarta. You had to go to the library or anything, just go outside to find your sources. But nowadays you can go just on behind your desk on your computer, just go see Google or YouTube, and that really helps. I mean, you can see so much on Google. I've never been there in Hong Kong still, but it's changed, of course, since then, right? Since the 1940s, 50s.
And what is the biggest challenge in working with Belgian comic book characters that you did not create?
Of course, we didn't create Blake and Mortimer. It's Jacobs, but what we did, well, we are influenced since our childhood already, about for decades, by the Belgian school, by Ligne Claire, Hergé and Jacobs. So for us it's quite natural to draw in this particular style. And of course you have to adapt the figures, the characters of Jacobs, Blake and Mortimer. And in a way you should act like him, and it's just looking carefully to those characters and, well, try to get in this character of Jacobs. We need the time, and now after 2 years I can say, well, I'm even after the first album now is published, for the second part now, we're now working on that. I get used to it, so it needs time. It's a learning curve, of course. So it needs time. It's difficult, but it feels natural as well.
And what about you and the coloring of this comic book?
About the coloring of this album, I did it. This book, it's not mine, this copy. It's from the 1950s. It's from Yves Schlier, from Dargo himself. It's from the 1950s, and he sent it to me because I had to look carefully to the coloring of this old book. And you can see, well, it's still done by gouache and écoline, not by computer, of course. And this is much more beautiful now than the coloring of nowadays. But we are now in the presence, and, well, I use the computer in Photoshop. But of course you can look carefully to the coloring of this, and you see I was inspired by this book. So I tried to make it look like this old coloring of the 1950s. And I think I succeeded, but this is my inspiration, and it's a responsibility just to make it look like it as it is real. So I hope I did, and I think, well, I'm quite confident with what I did. I can say that. I'm not ashamed about that. I'm proud of it. If I coloring the book myself, you keep control of about everything. Right? If somebody else will color it, well, who knows what it looks like.
Do you think that if he were alive, Edgar Pierre Jacobs would approve this comic book?
I don't know. If Jacobs was still alive, if he approved our Blake and Mortimer, I hope so, of course, but I don't know. I heard from people in French, and even comments on my social media accounts, that lots of people like what Turner and I did. Some people are saying it's better than Jacobs itself. Well, that's rubbish, of course. Of course it's not better than Jacobs. Jacobs, he's the only original one, so nobody can be better than Jacobs. But it says that we are quite near Jacobs. I cannot say if it's better or no. But for us, I hope, of course, we should like if Jacobs would approve it. Well, we don't know, right?
So what should we expect for the sequel of The Valley of the Immortals?
About the sequel of The Valley of the Immortals, well, I can only say if Santi, he wrote the story, and part 1 is more located in Hong Kong itself, and part 2 it's more located in the jungle. It's more a nature book, jungle and crocodiles and stuff. So that's the only thing I can say about that.
So it was a great pleasure to have you in this video, Peter.
All right, thank you. It was a pleasure to me. Bye bye.
Então é isso, já falando em português, agradeço mais uma vez ao Peter por ter dado essa entrevista histórica aqui para o canal. Muito obrigado, né? Espero que vocês tenham gostado do vídeo e até a próxima. Tchau, tchau!